Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of MTG Arena. Today is Wednesday, February 19th. Let's see, let's re-roll this to start with. I guess we should probably stop going to the store every day just to see that the daily deals have changed slightly. I guess maybe this might be a deal because a sleeve would be somewhat permanent, and with that permanency, there is something helpful. Also, they're showing a lot of skins that they're clearly selling skins that weren't in the store or that you could get otherwise, because I've gotten plenty of skins somehow that are little tastes. Like, they're just trying to get you hooked to the idea of getting skins. But yeah, sleeves on sale as a concept, almost. But do you really need to own all the sleeves? Almost makes sense. Like, there's, let's say, 25 sleeves in this without actually counting. Are you really going to have 25 decks that need 25 different sleeves? Particularly when the deck boxes that you make are based on the first card's picture that you use. So even though we have a duplicate here because this is a copy of the same deck, all the others of these cards are very varied, and that's where you would need the variety, is to know at a glance what deck you're about to pick. By the time you get into a game, or having to click over here just to see this one background, is kind of pointless. Furthermore, there's no easy way to say, hey, I just want this sleeve to be my sleeve for every deck I play. So you would have to go to every single deck you've built and select whatever sleeve you want to use, or use the default card back, which honestly I think they wouldn't be too terrible if they went for a nice minimalistic look like this and just made all new cards print with this card back. They've had this backwards compatibility for decades and decades and decades of the old card back, but the realistic truth of the matter is nobody is really playing paper Magic without sleeves anyways. So suffer through it for a year and say this is going to be the new card back going forward, with the exception of, I would say, make it say Magic the Gathering and not highlight Arena. And this clearly is the Planeswalker symbol that they want to focus on as far as Magic, which is clearly missing in the original background. But they should just embrace that, I think, in paper Magic, and move forward to the next thing. Otherwise, they're just never going to be able to set that precedent that they can make a change to the backside of a card, which is what they've had for decades, and it's been long enough. Meanwhile, they would have been better had they introduced a new card back when they introduced the concept of Planeswalkers. Had they, from a marketing perspective, said, we're introducing Planeswalkers, that is such a big change to Magic. Magic is not the same as the old Magic. And as such, to signify that and celebrate that, we're releasing a new card back for all cards going forward. Which would have let them keep things fresh, certainly. Well, what I was gonna do today was a draft. I think that is the right thing to do. We have this ranked draft Guild of Ravnica, which would give us Guild of Ravnica cards, which if I was to look at my collection and filter down to just Guild of Ravnica, and then not collected, we can see that there's a decent amount of Guilds of Ravnica cards that haven't been collected. Now, is this a smart move? I don't really think so, because in a month or two, these are gonna leave standard, and I might as well be playing a draft for Galaxian at that point. But what are my other options? I mean, I could do a traditional draft, Theros Beyond Death, and that would only cost, that's only gems, and that doesn't work. There's no reason to do the Brawlers Guild Hall. How do you play historic? Like historic event. Let's see, how would you do this? 500 gold to win a bunch of old cards and gold. So spend a small amount of gold to work our way backwards. Let's look at the collection as far as historic goes. Because you kind of know, or you kind of assume, that historic is going to be the pioneer branch at some point. So, like, that's a core 11. Is that a core 10? Most of these symbols I won't recognize at all. So the number of historic cards is actually very small. Wait, how do you... Well then, how do you play this? It seems to me like these historic cards are a small collection of cards that they've picked out of the air to make it feel like it's something like Pioneer, when it really isn't. They must have been like the easiest to program cards. So if I did the historic event, then it becomes a question about, am I going to get historic, or am I going to get just cards? At least 3 uncommons. At least 3 uncommons. At least 2 rares and 1 uncommon. And gold, 1,000 gold. How many wins do you have to get back your 500? 4 wins? Let's just see how this works. So without changing anything, let's just go into historic mode and see how this really plays. Like, without having any historic cards at all, can we, in relatively 5 to 10 games, end up with what we want? I'm gonna mulligan here. Because if there really is only like 20 cards, let's see. I'd made some changes, hadn't I? Probably want to go back and remove that character. He feels a little too expensive. I could be wrong about that though. Now, if they just give me uncommon cards and they're not historic cards, is it worth 500 gold to get 2 uncommon cards? I would say probably not. But it's a better offering, I think, than a lot of the other ways we play. Plus, compared to a draft, at least if we do historic, we're not wasting a huge amount of time drafting for cards. Although, doing a Ravnica draft, at least I wouldn't be doing a draft where I'm basically just getting duplicates of cards I already have. I think it probably is a case where we're going to have to just embrace doing drafts on older expansions and filling in the gaps. And then it becomes questionable at a certain point if we are going to try to do a draft all the time. How this is going to work. Alright, let's not do that yet. Let's attack first. Then activate this. Then put this on the field. I looked at the Hasbro things as a follow-up to one of my fans saying that it was the mobile version of Magic the Gathering Arena has been announced. I literally tried to find the Hasbro like shareholders meeting notes and skimmed through them and searched for Magic Arena. I could not confirm what he says. I'm not denying that what he heard was true by any means, but just for as small amount of journalistic integrity, I cannot back up with any other source. The idea sounds great. I love the idea. I hope it's true that they are making a mobile version of Magic Arena and going to release it before the end of 2020. I just don't see anybody reporting on that. I don't I follow at least 3 major video game news reporting sites that repeat a lot of other announcements, and this guy just has he has no creatures at all, does he? So I can't play Murder because I don't know if I'm just playing against a weird bot or a weird strategy, or if playing Historic is just going to constantly create scenarios like this where you're going to get defeated by strategies you never thought of. But yeah, I hope it's true. I could not find it. I tried. I made a special effort to verify the information. It definitely should be true, but I wouldn't be surprised also if somebody misheard something, or if somebody's excitement got ahead of them. And heck, it is the internet, so people getting the wrong information or repeating the wrong information or saying the wrong information is fairly rampant. But I'll leave it at that.
Don't worry, I got this.
Biomutant, there's the game Biomutant, has tweeted out a long post in text form on top of an image. So it's black text. Here, I'll just show it. Here we got black text with a blue sky It says we have we know many of you are wondering if the game is still in development. Let us assure you that we've never been working harder and are more focused on it than ever. So they came out and basically said they're still working on Biomutant, which I don't think you need to do that unless there's actual rumors out there saying that that's not happening. Which alright. Is there anything more I can do? I know I can put that on top, I guess, but that's not gonna help much. If anything, I need more. I need 2 more lands. Alright, well. Let's go ahead and kill this because it seems like they have nothing else they can really do.
Hey, that was uncalled for.
Nope, I can't say that phrase. I was about to say we don't have a lot of video game news today, but like every single time I say that, and it's lost all meaning at this point. I started a little late. Was woken up abruptly twice yesterday. Once at a reasonable time, and then I went back to sleep and then was woken up a second time. So boy, was it an unproductive day. You know what that got me thinking of just how, while there were days when I was in school that were incredibly productive, there definitely were way more days when basically nothing happened. Basically, I say because I'm sure that the teachers were giving out homework and assignments and or teaching something, but what they were teaching or the assignments were all so unimportant to me in particular, but I think most students, and really unimportant in the long term as far as most students' life. It was, there definitely were a lot of days where had you just asked me at the end of the day what did I do, I would have said nothing. And that's typical, I guess, for a lot of kids. It's like, what'd you do at school today? Nothing. And it's an exaggeration a little bit, but it's an accurate description too. So it's not a good system to establish the habits of a highly productive person if you want people to be highly productive people. Now I guess most 9-to-5 jobs aren't that highly productive anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But it is kind of annoying, certainly, to say that an entire day would be wasted due to insomnia. Here's a great example of the programming being wrong. Why did it pop up this card like that when that's not how this card works any other time? Unless there's a card here that says you must, if a card must be played, if it's playable. But I don't think there's anything like this.
Let's try this.
Is this guy gonna die? It's gonna be kind of tough to get 10 people on the field the way he's playing, because he is trying to doing a board destruction concept. Oh, this sucks. This sucks horribly. And this guy's not gonna run out of cards or anything. Let's see, we got somebody on the chat. Josh says hello. Hello, Josh. Yep. So yeah, as far as the accountability section, that I don't know why I'm even doing the accountability sections anymore, because I'm clearly not being motivated in any way to do more work. I did definitely open up Batman God of Year, Game of the Year, Batman Arkham Asylum, Batman Arkham Asylum Game of the Year edition. I did open it and got to the first thing and then got distracted somehow, and I did that like 3 days ago. Also, it looks like my uploading software is being blocked. Potentially, it seems like maybe all uploading software is being blocked as they are shifting everybody to using the YouTube beta upload mechanic, which is not particularly better than the uploading software. It seems like it's relatively doable, but it is just going to be a lot more, probably more work than I would prefer. It opens the door to me wasting a lot more time trying to program a automation tool on top of Chrome to try and automate the process more, but really it just means I'm going to have to go back to the right move is just to go back to doing it manually, and that's no fun. That just more time wasted doing paperwork to get the video out. There's also this incredibly frustrating scenario that's happening, and it's not something you should, that on the face of it you would be frustrated with, but I am like up 12 subscribers this month, in the last 28 days. Maybe not month, that's probably the wrong way to say that. And I have no freaking clue why. Or the reasons why that I can speculate are the absolute worst reasons you'd ever want to hear. Because to me, it seems like, and this is what I've heard from so many other YouTube content creators, to me it seems like the algorithm will suggest my videos and get me more subscribers if I just make less content. And that's not been something I've ever wanted to do, and it's not something that lets me play more games and cover more games. It's literally just rewarding me for doing less, and that's not something I want to hear, and not something I want to be the case. Regardless, getting 12 more subscribers, while helpful, isn't like putting me on the track to being near 1,000 anytime soon. Like, the first 100 subscribers you get are the hardest, and then the next 100 are the second hardest, and the third 100 are the fourth, the next hardest. And like, at this rate, I'd probably only have maybe 420 subscribers by 2021. At that rate, also, then it would be 6 more years, assuming that there's no snowball effect whatsoever. 6 more years before I'd even have 1,000 to be back into the the requirements for the partner program, at which point almost certainly YouTube is going to put in some other speed bump. Like, I never wanted to become rich and famous with YouTube, but I wanted a reasonable amount of money at some point, something to reward the effort. This is a real crazy game that they've played here. They've just gotten a ridiculous amount of cards on the field. Although I kind of have to say this is nice. They're figuring out how to compress the cards a little bit better. Like, they played for a long time with no cards whatsoever, and then still somehow succeeded. Well, let's see if that was a fluke. Let's see, Josh says, I started playing people and man, I'm getting my butt whooped, but that's okay since I'm new. I assume you mean playing people on Magic. Yeah. That's probably going to be the case. If I would just say, in particular, have somebody on your side if you're playing paper Magic. There's definitely, and this is my jaded opinion from somebody who played Ice Age and was cheated as a kid playing Magic by his quote-unquote friends. If you're playing paper Magic and there's not somebody who is an actual impartial judge watching the actions, well, or you don't have somebody who's on your side, somebody who's going to be a partner, playing doubles would probably be a great idea in paper Magic. It's real easy to accidentally quote unquote misinterpret how a card works or how things resolve and get little advantages. It's really easy to cheat in lots of different ways. And there definitely are people out there trying to cheat at the kids' game for little to no reason other than they're ridiculously childish and have a need to win at all costs. We're getting bits of news, so I imagine we might have a lot of news left over by the end of this stream. Let's see. Josh says, on Arena, paper Magic is fine. I think Arena in particular, because Theros Beyond Death doesn't seem to be doing very well. It's not being well received. I think Arena is suffering a little bit right now from that. And I wouldn't be super surprised if they decided to not ban cards out of Standard, both for paper Magic and Arena, just because of theirs not doing that well. Unless it turns out that the next expansion, which should be Core 2021, I guess. Yeah. I don't know how a core set after a bad set could improve things by much. So you're looking towards the end of the year for the next set that might potentially add enthusiasm for the Standard play set. And since that is the case, you have a lot of people on Arena that have pretty much all the cards that can be played with, and I don't feel like there's a great reason to play Commander. I don't feel like there's a great reason to play Historic. Is not a great reason really to play draft for the Theros Beyond Death. I've already hit that point. Like, the reason I'm testing out historic right now is because I really don't want to do the draft on Theros Beyond Death, which is not even available right now because they changed how often that's going to be available. And I really don't want to do the Guilds of Ravnica draft because those cards are so old that I know they're going to get banned. I kind of started in the wrong place. Honestly, it just slipped by me. Like 2 years ago, I would have been playing Hearthstone. Had I been more following just the Magic community in general, I would have heard that Magic Arena was in open beta, and I would have jumped over to that, which is the right move. Would have been the right move to do. Is this doing anything? Nope. It's just stopping me from killing that creature. I have 7 here, so I can kind of pull this off. Just do that. Just do that. Right. Sacrifice that. Decline that action. See, yeah, this card just confuses the issue when you're using the ovens. So either I need to play a Nightmare strategy or I need to play a Oven Cauldron Familiar strategy. And I would argue it seems like the community thinks the Cauldron Familiar strategy is a better strategy. But yeah, I should have been paying more attention. I should have jumped over to Magic Arena when it was in beta. If, like, let's just highlight this. If I had been in beta, I would have gotten Jalaxian, Rivals of Jalaxian, Dominaria, and Core 2019. All of these cards sets we could have played with during that beta for a year, and they would have been banned now. I would have moved forward and gotten most of Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance, War of the Spark, and Core 2020. And these are on the verge of being banned, but they're not yet. So there was still time to, as of right now, to enjoy these cards had I gotten them. But since I started at Throne of Eldraine, I've gotten most Throne of Eldraine cards and most Theros Beyond Death cards, and it doesn't really make a ton of sense to go back any further, other than the fact that I've gotten most of these. That's why I'm playing Historic right now, is because I'm wondering if the cards I get from the Historic challenge, let's see, the Historic event, I'm wondering if these cards that are going to be rewarded are going to be Historic cards, of which it seems to be very little actual Historic cards. But that might make sense because Historic might just mean you can play all the old cards sets. I need to make a Historic deck and see what that looks like. Of course, I'm going to get my butt handed to me because I'll be playing against people who have complete sets of things like Jalaxian and know what to do with them, which is something I don't know. Yeah. I decided to give up the ghost on my server, like, after 5 or 6 attempts to fix one hard drive in particular, it's pretty obvious that that one is just not going to be fixed. The danger here though is I bought a new hard drive that's soon to be delivered. The danger is I'm gonna add this to the ZFS RAID array, and then it's still gonna say you can't remove the old parts, the old one, and there literally is only so many plugs one can have when you have 16 drives plugged into a computer. If anything, I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't enough PCI Express lanes in my motherboard and CPU, and that is part of the problem. So I can't just throw in another 2 or 3 hard drives without removing the old hard drives, and it doesn't actually improve the health of the RAID array if it is going to never let go of the old hard drives, and which is what it's basically doing right now. It's just refusing to let go of the old hard drives. And there might be just a different way we have to try and approach that. I may have to actually build up the RAID array, which would just add even more redundancy. But I don't want to actually add more redundancy because I'm adding them as partitions, so I'm chopping up a hard drive into smaller, least common denominator segments. So I got a 4 terabyte drive. I probably am going to have to break it down into 500 gigabyte amounts, and so that means you're going to have 8 partitions that I could throw into the RAID array, but it's already a 76 partition RAID array, which is way too high, and it doesn't really add any redundancy then, because it is basically the same hard drive many times over, which means if the hard drive itself just fails, which is usually how that's going to go, it's not going to just be one partition that fails, it's going to be potentially 8 of them failing at the same time, which is not helpful and not really any more recoverable. The big problem and the big solution would be to build a second computer, basically, and copy all the data over from the second computer to the second computer, destroy the RAID array, and rebuild it more appropriately without the bad hard drive and without some of these smaller disks. That would be the right way to do it. I think this is still worth doing. But yeah, I gotta keep trying until I lose everything. Turns out also the Let's Encrypt certifications only last 90 days, and so I have like 20 more days since the last time my server has actually been able and enabled to access the internet, and something's gone wrong where it's not starting up. I know I disabled it because I didn't want to deal with that while the RAID array was messed up, but it does add this ticking time clock to the situation. I guess really you should just decline that. So yeah, if my server ever goes down for more than 90 days, which is quite a long time, but not unrealistic when it is just a home lab server that's not getting the funding or support that it needs. It certainly would be a lot easier if I had somebody else that had a whole second set of life skills and IT skills and knowledge to bounce ideas off of and maybe get some experience from. Alright, play this. Then I'm just gonna go ahead and do no attacks. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Reach, which looks like an MS Paint style point-and-click adventure, for lack of a better term. Here we've got a sound effect playing and this like grotesque animation. Reach is $6.99 English and Russian, or English interface with Russian subtitles. So that to me feels like a low effort Russian game. Yeah. After Monday, when we got Metro Exodus on Steam, I suspect we probably won't run into a scenario where we run into a lot of another AAA game that came out this week. I think we'll probably see announcements once per week as far as AAA games go. Let's see. Gamatsu has the Famitsu review scores. Suppose it is also worth mentioning that the PlayStation 4 Death's End Request game, the game Death's End Request for PlayStation 4, had some of their costumes censored. Another game had its costumes censored before it was even released. I forget the name of that. And the Western version of Persona 5 is being censored again. So a lot of censorship going on, and a lot of it centering around Sony too. Like I would say some of the Persona 5 stuff seems to be more the fact that there are people complaining on Reset Era about Persona games being problematic, and they are actually listening to them, when I think that's probably a terrible idea and they shouldn't listen to them at all. And they're really not listening to them. It's important to always take that they're censoring the Western version that they don't care about, and that's more of a NIS situation than anything else. Like, it's not unheard of for Japanese companies to censor Western or foreign releases outside of Japan in general, just so that it stops people from reverse importing the games back into Japan, where they charge a considerably higher amount. See. Apparently these both have flying. I think I'm gonna lose relatively quickly here. Yep. I'm pretty well doomed. These historic games, for one reason or another, are going rather quickly, which would be nice if you got rewards for every game you played, past a certain amount of time or turns, but it doesn't work that way. Did I have fun in this match? I'm gonna say no. Let's just say no. I didn't really have fun in that match because it just kind of quickly happened. Alright, here's what... Are we locked in on this deck? I guess we are. So all I could do is sideboard. Anyways, so this week's Famitsu scores. We have American Fighter, which got 28 out of 40. Bubble Bobble 4 Friends got 30 out of 40. That's pretty bad. Cat Quest 2 got 32 out of 40. That's pretty good. Code Shifter got 26 out of 40. That's awful. Same to say with Foxyland 2. Frostpunk Console Edition got 33 out of 40. That's a little surprising that it's that high for a Japanese audience. Love Our Kiss got 33 out of 40. Reventure, never heard of that, 33 out of 40. Senrei no Kifu Gendai Shogi Mystery got 30 out of 40. And Yoni Rises got 26 out of 40. So yeah, as far as this week of games coming out, it's not a good collection of games. A lot of not recognizable games on that list. A lot of badly reviewed games on that list. Let's see. What do we want to get rid of? I think I probably don't need the wagon wheel anywhere as often as I used to once I got rid of the commander card that needed it. See, next we have a game on Steam called Attack of the Alien Things from Lava, which clearly is just an asset flip top-down shooter, although I'm not even really seeing them shoot. I'm seeing them just run in circles and barely shooting. This is $4.99 English only, 13 achievements. Let's see what this is. New item in my inventory. That's not it. That can't possibly be the new item in my inventory. Probably got a new trading card. Oh, I've got Hitman Go booster packs, which start at 17 cents. So I probably had a trade that just now went through. Do I want to attack? I guess no. Next we have a game on Steam called Tag.io, which looks like a low effort asset flip game. Tag doesn't really work like this in reality. You don't just tag people and then all of a sudden they become on your side in this infinitely growing system. Like, that's not Tag. I don't know what game that would be. Some weird variant of Tag, but it's not Tag. It's $2.99 English only, this game is, and it just looks like an asset flip. So yeah, I'm gonna pretty much end up saying that for every game that I can feel. I guess if we finished slightly early today, that might help somewhat. After having spent over a week lying in bed after hurting my back, I'm not in as bad of shape. I'm still not in good shape, by any means, and I'm not sure that good shape is even attainable anymore, but at the very least I can say I'm sitting right now and not just spasming every time I shift in the chair, which is how it was for our first week. So, like, I should get back to recording. There's nothing else I can really do. Well, I could get back to programming my electronic digital sign. I need to do that also. But otherwise, there's kind of nothing else to do. And the upload software, if it truly is blocked, because it might have just like triggered a quota system that YouTube has for third-party apps. But if my uploads are truly blocked, then I need to just I'm gonna give it a day or two, and then I'm gonna just start having to use the manual upload process to get all the videos uploaded. But it's not going to really affect the schedule too much unless it just goes on and on and on forever, because I've already kind of decided and committed to really only having one video air per day on my channel. There definitely are YouTubers I've subscribed to that only put up videos like once a month. It would be nice if there was like real Patreon support behind something like that, though, instead of just a general appearance of laziness. Alright, well, let's do this, I guess. 1, 2, 3, 4. Gametsu has an article here, a Yuri-themed mystery visual novel called Seabed for the Switch launches on March 19th. You follow 3 characters who live in different worlds but seek the same goal. Yuri being the general concept of girl, lesbian on lesbian, girl on girl love, although not always going so explicit as they actually want to be in a romantic relationship always. It can often be very subtle, and just deep friendships are displayed as a deep friendship, or taken, if you want to interpret the stories as deep friendships. So, another great example of the Switch, at least in Japan, maybe that game doesn't come to the West, but the Switch, at least in Japan, and Nintendo, at least in Japan, being a lot more open-minded than Sony seems to be. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article. Remedy is preparing to jump into live services arena. The live service arena with Vanguard. So the developer of Control, which I didn't really find Control to be that great in Alan Wake, and I didn't find Alan Wake to be that great, is now making a live service arena game, well, a live service game called Project, codenamed Vanguard. There definitely were elements of Control in the late game and the DLC and the expeditions. Definitely parts there that screamed out that they could have been live services, microtransaction games, always online style games. I I cannot do anything here. I'm gonna lose either way. Let's see. Yeah. I think a lot of the random expedition stuff that was in Control, had it not been in Control and had they focused more on a linear storyline experience, it probably would have been a lot better. There's definitely a lot of content that I never even bothered to look at because I had my fill just by the random encounters. And I really wasn't even going on expeditions, but I think expeditions and the regenerating, like respawning random encounters were a result of the idea of the game just being something that you could play forever. Alright, so here's the question. We got 200 gold, we spent 500 gold, so each one of these has to be worth about $1.20 in real world money for this to have been a profitable thing, which probably not the case. And when I watch YouTubers open packs, they're not even willing to count any card that's below $2 because I assume that unless you're going to make a huge order of a bunch of cards, you can't profitably store and trade cards online, sell cards at a shop or online for less than $2. So this is a brand new card, and this is a symbol I don't recognize. So this probably is a historic card. This is a commander card, and a symbol I don't recognize. Almost certainly this is worth more than $2. I don't think you'd find too many commanders that aren't worth that. And this is a card that has its own audio and a symbol I don't recognize. So if I was to guess, and I really can't price these out, this is probably something approaching $2.50 to $3. These two are probably somewhere above $1.20. So I probably did profit from that, not having any historic cards. What I want to do here is see if there's something we can learn from here. If we look at historic only and collected and not collected, none of the cards we just got were the historic cards. So historic is this like expansion, I guess. So if I was to say I want to craft a new deck that's historic, then can I use Jalaxian cards? Well, I can use Jalaxian cards that I have. I think we just got this one. Yeah. So I just got some Jalaxian cards, which probably isn't too helpful. And I can use Opt, which Opt has been, like, you get reprints of Opt, it seems like, in almost every expansion, just so that they print more garbage cards. So all of these expansions are cards that could be played in historic. Like, I guess that's the case. It's not telling me I can't play them, which then implies to me that if I was to select Theros Beyond Death cards, I should also be able to play those, because it would be really ironic, I suppose, if they would exclude the newest cards, although that wouldn't be a terrible format. Yeah, so We'll go down here and delete this deck. Yeah. So, is it worth it to do historic event versus doing a ranked draft of Ravnica? I don't think it actually matters. I need to play some green spells too, and I didn't make any progress towards that at all because I was playing a black deck. I don't think it matters because if you do a historic event, while it's cheap and it might get you some uncommon and gold back, like you could double your gold if you can play really, really well. And if you have like a really, really good deck that is now outside of standard, you could go back and play that deck. What this doesn't do is give you any gems. So if you're going to do historic, you have to do it on top of doing drafts. And you still kind of have to do drafts because you need the gems. So, seems like we're going to consistently do a draft every week. Every Wednesday. It doesn't seem like there's a way to get around that. Whatever the draft is, we need those gems. We need to figure out if we can somehow get 3,000 gems to buy the next mastery level. So here we go. Now in Guilds of Ravnica in particular, there's definitely cards I don't have. So this will be mostly rare drafting. But I will try to be somewhat kind on it. Now here's an interesting concept. In this first pile of cards, does it really give you any indication of what your deck is going to be? Because if you see that like most of these were red cards, does that tell you you should start building a red deck? In real drafting, it probably does, because you look at a whole bunch of cards and then you pass the pile to the player to the side of you. I don't even know if you go clockwise or counterclockwise. And then they pick a card and then they pass the pile. So so this should be an indication of where to go with all of this. There's a lot of cards here that aren't I have none of. So we'll just start with a white card, and you're gonna have to do 3 colors. This could be red and white. I only have one of those. I don't have any of these. Yeah, I'm gonna try to be mostly a white deck and see how far this actually takes me. Let's see. White and green, I guess. I think somehow I'm going to end up doing better than I should. But there is also something to be said about just playing relatively well in one of these and getting gems, because that's what we're really trying to do. Let's see. Do I want to do this? And what this, I guess, will also accomplish is that we will have the beginnings of a more thought through and built up white deck in general. for historic play. I mean, it's actually really easy here to do this because I'm missing so many cards in Ravnica. This is a white and green too. Let's see. This is an easy choice because I don't have any of those. And that's an easy choice. And there was like a little animation, it seems like, when it came out with this one, and this one looks like it is an amazingly good card, so take that first. And let's see, we only have one of those, but then we're missing a lot of other things. Counters, that's a 2.0, but this is better, so take that. And this one looks pretty good, and this one looks pretty good, so we don't have that. I'll take that. A white and green land. Interesting. Guess land is good, so we'll take it. Do I want to take another white and green land? Oh, I don't think I have any copies of this, so I'll take that. Alright. We could take another copy of this. Our first copy of this, which really wouldn't help. Or one of those, which really wouldn't help. Or a first copy of this. I guess we'll take that. And I don't have a copy of this, but still trying to win here, so I'm going to take that. I'm still really only looking at the score that these get instead of really knowing what these cards do, particularly since I haven't played Ravnica before, so it really is the blind leading the blind here. Now, this pile is completely different than the pile that I just saw, so there must be something when, like, well, I guess you're playing against maybe 8 people in the draft, so each of the 8 players opens a pack, and then each of those people hand shift their selections, so you maybe never come back to that selection. So if that's the way it works, if you never see the pack that you originally opened the second time, there is no strategy there. Or if you only see it once, then there's probably a very small strategy there that's not as worth mentioning or hinging upon. I'm going to take that one because I don't have one of those. And then I'll go ahead and take that one. And we could either get this one with vigilance or this one. I'll take that one. We can either get this or this. This one's more valuable than that. And this one's a high value card, so I probably should take it. Is there anything else that looks like it's particularly valuable or something I don't have? Like, there's a land here that I don't have. There's this card that I don't have. But I think the best value would be to either take this or this. Actually, this is the best value for my deck right now. Now, should I take this commander card? Probably, just as a rare draft. In the long run, taking this card is probably the better move than anything else, so I'll take that. Like, if I ever do get into playing Commander, playing with Commander cards, having Commander cards to play makes a lot of sense. I don't have any copies of this, but it's pretty low rated. Let's see. This is a colorless. I don't know what you could really do with that strategy. Just gonna take that for variety's sake. Take that because I don't have a copy of that one. Let's see. Guess we'll take a fourth copy of that. Now, this we don't have any. So, yeah. Take that. Take a fourth copy of this, or a third copy of this, or a second copy of this, or fourth copy of this, or a first copy of that, but that's really low rated. So I'm gonna take that. And it does kind of feel like the bots are not grabbing any of the cards that I'd want. I'm gonna take another copy of that. I don't have any copies of that. I only have one copy of that and a couple copies of that. I also don't have a copy of that. But we'll have to just do that later. You know, it becomes kind of obvious here that the thing I should have done is I should have looked. It doesn't really matter for Guilds of Ravnica since I'm missing so many cards, but if I am going to rare draft in the future, I should look and see what cards I am missing in general. Like, if I'm missing a bunch of reds, then I should make a red deck. If I'm missing a bunch of blues, I should make a blue deck. Because it's going to be fairly easy, I think, to accidentally end up with cards that are building a deck that's not going to really help you in any way. So let's go ahead and assume we're not going to make a blue deck, and assume we're not going to make a red deck, and we've got 18 more cards we need to get rid of. Yep, we just took that for that reason. So there's still some reds. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. And so we've got some blacks in here too. Get rid of that. And there must be another one somewhere here. Yeah, get rid of that. There we go. Plains and forest and a red-green card, which wouldn't be too bad. That puts me down to 11 cards. So now it's just a matter of going through the cards and looking. 2 damage to target attacking or blocking creature is not bad. A defender for 0/3 to draw a card. This is confusing and useless as an artifact because you put a top card of your library into your graveyard, which just lets you get rid of cards. Like, if I was trying to do that Janus Mill deck where I just needed more and more cards to let me run out of cards, this might make sense. But that's about the only way it makes sense. Counters, enchant land, you draw a card and it gives you double land. Let's see, Mentor. This one's a pretty good card. Vigilance. This one has... Is that black and... Yeah, it looks like that's black and green. So let's get rid of that. Even though we could play it. A 2/2 for 3 mana with Death Touch. Just so you have a Death Touch card in the green deck is kind of crazy. Let's see, Convoke. Flying Vigilance Mentor. This one's probably a little too expensive at 4 mana for a 4/3. So if we get rid of a couple of those. That seems like that'd be alright. We need 7 more cards. Gain 1 life for each creature in the graveyard. Hexproof and indestructible when you join shields for 5 mana. That doesn't seem like that's reasonable. This one is 8 mana for Convoke and Flying. Probably should get rid of that. This one's more reasonable. Yeah, it's a little too expensive. When you cast a spell, reveal the top number of cards, or the number of cards is the number of creatures in your graveyard. You may put green permanents with converted mana cost X or less among them onto the battlefield. Ooh, that sounds crazy. It's really expensive, but that does sound like a crazy thing. But we need to get rid of something. This taps 2 cards. Let's get rid of at least one of those. When this enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards and then draw 1. So it's probably a pretty good card if I was looking for something. Otherwise it's not that good, so I'll get rid of it. I don't think I'm actually going to be looking for anything. I'm trying to just have all of my cards be relatively good. Giving another creature vigilance. And a lot of these have vigilance anyways. It's an interesting trick. Let's see. Let's go ahead and get rid of 1 defender. Gotta figure something else. Let's go ahead and get rid of Righteous Blow. This one would get Flying as an ability. If you pay an extra amount of mana, that's probably not worth it. So something else we want to get. Let's get rid of Pax Favor. Alright. So this will be an interesting draft deck. And that, of course, takes so long to do. And since we're still playing with bots, I feel like as soon as I stop playing with bots, once they add human drafts into the game, I feel like I'll probably just lose even more. So I should probably just enjoy the fact that I'm playing against bots. But there is something slightly annoying with the idea that they're never going to just have a network disconnect, and they're never just going to concede at random, like you might get. Like I'd love to have those free victories. There we go. Iron Shell Beetle. Not particularly great. Minter. Convoke. Okay, that worked. We have a game on Steam called Ramawu. I assume that's how it's pronounced. It looks to me like it's mostly just asset flip locations, though. It's tagged as an experimental exploration game, which, in fairness, The Witness could also be tagged that way, and it could look a lot like this. So, yeah, I don't know. At first look, it looks like an asset flip, scenery, walking simulator type game. They want $4.99. English only. There's a spoiler. It seems like it has no controller support at all. Let's spoil. You navigate between 96 worlds. Each world has 4 gates. Let's see. Discover each of the worlds. Right. I don't think I played right there. I still have plenty of opportunity. Let's see. Well, the fact that he's just kind of explaining the spoiler to the entire game in the description really ruins this game. Like, literally, he's Ramawu explained everything there, and it seems like there's no real puzzles. It's just that there are 96 what one could easily argue are asset flip locations, and you go there, you look at them, and you kind of don't do anything else. Maybe you have to wander around and find a gate, but he spoiled the surprise unnecessarily in the description, when he could have just said, this is a game about exploration, can you find all the mysteries? You could be very subtle and sneaky about it, and certainly many a worse game has done that and tricked people into buying it. But it's kind of like if you said a Tomb Raider game is a game where you run around shooting bows and arrows and guns and occasionally tomb raiding a tomb. But that's a disservice to what the full experience was. Oh, I guess I would want to go back and talk about Control a little bit more and say, had Control not had so many random spawning fights, and it was a straight linear experience where if you played Control a second time, you would have the exact same experience, you'd have the exact same fights. If there'd been polish instead of just a decent but not great artificial intelligence running where the enemies run and where they go. If there was a way that a speedrunner could run through the entire story of Control and and know exactly where all the enemies were going to be and shoot in those general areas before they even are visible. That would have given them more of a focus to make sure that players like me saw everything. There's kind of a considerably large amount of content I did not see and had no interest in seeing by the time I was at the end of the main story of Control, and yeah, I was not really having a great time. A lot of it also is the problem of just it being in text form. A lot of the story that's being told is just this text-based story that you have to find collectibles and pickups to really know and understand, instead of it being told directly to you. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article here for the PC and Switch. Stella is coming to the PC and Switch on March 13th. It's currently available on Xbox One and Apple Arcade. I don't recognize this game though. It looks kind of like Limbo. Looks like a side puzzle platforming type experience, which we can have one of those every now and then. But yeah, none of them are actually going to do anything great. Limbo survives, I think. Well, here we go. I'm going to attack with all, and then mentor, and that brings that one up. And this could have put a 1-1 on that. Okay. So we're going to try to attack with everything, and then we're going to have to play this. What happened there? What just happened that they all tapped and didn't attack? Oh, this is bull. This is total bull. I have no idea what just happened. His spells wouldn't have really done that. And my spell really wouldn't have done that. So did I convoke to cast a spell that I shouldn't have convoked? I guess I must have. Either that or the game just ruined itself by not acting correctly. Seriously, this is a great example of what's gonna push me out of playing Magic really fast. Like, I'm gonna try and stick with it. I plan on sticking with it until the second Marvel game comes out, but when you just have no way to go back and look at how a game went, and when something happens and it's just not explainable, I really need a log somewhere, something that would tell me, no, you idiot, you convoked and that tapped all of these characters. The inconsistency of the "Are you sure" box is also a problem. Like, that totally should have been an "Are you sure you want to do that?" because you're going to tap this, and this. And that's going to undo the whole idea of you attacking in the first place. I don't think I would have won anyways, but it's annoying. It's also pretty ridiculous that what's really going on here is I'm spending more time and having more success at least by simply having the draft happen and getting the cards. So the real gameplay is spending the money and opening the packs than it is actually playing the game. And that's really not acceptable. For as lackluster as the pack opening experience was for Hearthstone, I'm kind of glad there was never a draft type system introduced in Hearthstone, because that would have really sucked. We've got plenty of land. Just trying not to use it all. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article here. THQ Nordic has approved a Gothic remake and confirms plans to open a Barcelona studio. I believe THQ Nordic also has acquired another company, which will be a different story, and it really is just more evidence that THQ Nordic is on an insane path, an insane track. You can't really even make the argument that you once could, that maybe they were taking the bad elements of the old THQ and setting that aside, and then they were bringing back slowly and purposefully the good elements of what the old THQ was, or they're building a new THQ. I mean, these companies are acquiring, very possibly none of them actually were in the original THQ. But I'm gonna go ahead and sacrifice this. I can't. But at this point, they've just acquired so much and taken on the concept of doing so much. They're setting themselves up to be very much like what an Electronic Arts or an Activision Blizzard were many years ago, and you only have to look at the current state of Electronic Arts or Activision Blizzard to see that more and more the managers have gotten in charge of the money men have gotten in charge of the development of what gets made and what doesn't, to the point where EA barely puts out any games on an annual basis, and they are always giant games that they constantly are trying to put microtransactions in to get as much money as possible. Activision Blizzard barely putting out any games, and when they do put out games, they're trying to be mobile games so that they can have as much microtransactions in that. It's not a good position to be in. Well, I can play this next turn. Does that save me? 4. I don't think I can do 5. Can't attack. This is so pathetic. And I thought I was making a good deck also. This is what really is annoying about this, is the idea that no, you're not even making a good deck. Alright. So we've got to pass here, then choose blockers. Block, and then do this and auto pay. not gonna really save the day. Even if I defend with this, and this, playing this I don't think actually solves anything. This one does have reach, but I kinda don't need that unless he destroys that, and if he figures out a way to do any amount of damage whatsoever, I'm pretty much dead. Gamasutra has another article here. THQ Nordic parent company Embracer Group acquires the World War Z developer Saber Interactive. So they are acquiring it for an initial $150 million. Saber is also known for creating Switch ports of The Witcher 3 and Vampire, and has worked on Halo, Quake, and NBA. NBA what? Was their game just called NBA? Let's see. How many people do I have in the... I mean, I could bring back the Defender, and that's pretty much it. So, yeah, again, just more continuation of the story that there's really no moderation, it seems, as far as the idea of a THQ Nordic taking it a little bit easy. See, I was a little careful there because I didn't want to accidentally convoke a creature and then tap both of these and let them win in the next turn. Also want to do no attacks, otherwise I would also lose. I did get back up to 6 health by playing that. Gamatsu has an article here. Persona 5 Royale, Morgana's Phantom Thief Crash Course trailer is out. I did mention Persona 5 being remastered. I assume it's in Persona 5 Royale, which is, I think, a remake of Persona 5, which isn't that old of a game in the first place. I think that's how that's breaking down. Well, we could attack here, and we can attack here, and he's gonna have to block with a couple. And since this one has vigilance, I should have been attacking with this one a long time ago. The two major problems of Persona are still it being a PlayStation exclusive and it being owned by NIS, who does like, I want to say CDMA, but that's not the right word. That's a cell phone technology. DMCA claims. So apparently I had no green permanent that I could bring to the field. Why is that the case? Oh, so there's a whole strategy to this that doesn't really make sense. I would have to have a whole bunch of green permanents or creatures in general in the field to equal the value of this. So that still doesn't really make sense because this only costs 1 green. So do you need an extra green permanent? That, yeah, it just doesn't make any sense at all. Just go ahead and start attacking with things. Like this is the only way I'm gonna get any victories here at all, is if I just start attacking things. Gamma Sutra has an article. Stadia support arrives on 19 non-Google Pixel phone models this week. Let's see if there's a bit of a list here. 15 from Samsung Galaxy line, the Razer phone, Razer Phone 2, and the Asus ROG phone, and the Asus ROG, which is like Republic of Gamers phone 2. So I would assume the real thing here, and we kind of need to look at the full list, is when you say 15 from the Galaxy line, that could be a lot less than you think because they've made so many Galaxy phones. So it is the S8, S8 Plus, S8 Active. That's 3. The Galaxy Note 8. That's 4 of the 8 series. The S9, the S9 Plus, the Note 9, the S10, the S10e, the S10 10 Plus, the Note 10 and the Note 10 Plus, and the newly announced S20, S20 Plus, and S20 Ultra, which really just goes to show the like massive level of insanity that seems to exist here. Does any of these have flying? No. Let's see how that works. So yeah, my phone, I have the S9, so I would be able to do Stadia. I don't think that really matters to anybody because I don't think anybody wants anything to do with Stadia. But yeah, the option I suppose is there. Not really a ton of cell phones to support though. Oh. So much for that draft. Yeah, I am nowhere close to working my way up. I do have one more game I can play. I thought I was on the third loss there, but I was only on the second. These drafts are long. They're not helpful. They significantly increase the lose percentage ratio. I don't know how you really fix that other than to say there probably should be some better matchmaking with the AI, and maybe when they get real people in there will be better matchmaking. Like much like how the standard ranked gameplay is very easy when you're at a very, very low level because there's just a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing. Maybe once we start playing real people in ranked draft, I will run against a bunch of people who are very easy for the first month or two. That doesn't really solve the problem in a longer perspective though, because the second month happens and if I'm at silver tier 5 or gold tier 1, which is I think a reasonable estimate if I was playing against real people, I don't think that then helps much, because then I'd just be back to where I was playing against people instead of bots. Maybe people will be a little bit more random, and that might change the calculation a little bit, but not by much. So I feel like there might need to be a self-selection here of tiers, which is what the matchmaking is supposed to be anyways. But if I was in the baby tier, if I was where it was I was winning a lot more against the AI, I'd appreciate it, because this is just really slow. It's really, really slow, and it's really easy to lose quite a bit, particularly if you're rare drafting. Oh man, I just screwed that up, didn't I? Yeah, I just played 2 cards to get rid of 2 cards. That was not a smart move. Even if this does work out somehow, I don't think I can call this a smart move. Alright, moving on. Gamatsu has an article here. A mystery visual novel Inuwashi is coming to PC on March 6th in Japan and Switch later. It's a down-and-out private eye and Madam Police Detective Ikebukuro case file. Wonder if I should figure out what that word means. It sounds like some kind of genre. So yeah, looks pretty nicely animated in that one screenshot, which doesn't mean much. It's very possible we'll start getting a lot more announcements for games just directly due to the coronavirus, Japanese games in particular. I wouldn't be super surprised if some of the Tokyo Game Show and E3, although very few Japanese developers are even go to E3, but like Tokyo Game Show might be a little bit smaller next time it happens. Gamescom might be a bit smaller. I could see Japanese people not wanting to get on a plane to go to like Germany and do Gamescom. So if that was the case and we started to see a lot more announcements, just direct announcements for visual novels, it would be a little bit different. Not hugely different though, because most Japanese companies do love to trickle out bits of information anyways. So this may just be the way. Nintendo's not the sole person that's thought of the idea of just having like Nintendo Direct style announcements. Right. What does this undergrowth do? Guess we'll see what happens here. Do that and that. And then attack with all. And we'll see what happens. Let's see. Gamasutra has another article here. The Embracer-owned Koch Media acquires Let's Sing developer Voxler. So, Embracer is the parent company of THQ Nordic. They also bought Koch Media, which also bought the Let's Sing developer Voxler. So yet another major company that they've just acquired. Meanwhile, I seriously doubt we're going to see a major resurgence of Let's Sing or karaoke games. Yeah, for as popular as karaoke seems to be, according to anime in Japan, it's not something that ever translates to actual video games. I think the reason for that is somewhat deceptive, but probably pretty obvious to a Japanese person. Japanese people in small houses with or small apartments, really small, paper thin walls, sometimes actual paper walls. So the idea of making a lot of noise and irritating your neighbors is just culturally unacceptable. So if they go out and go to a karaoke bar, those are always in soundproof private rooms that they can sing as loud as they want and be as obnoxious as they want without anybody complaining or offending anyone. So if you try to do that same concept in a video game format, it doesn't really work because the console, the TV, would be in somebody's house and you would be annoying your neighbors. So yeah, that kind of does make sense why it's never caught on. And if karaoke can't catch on in Japan, where karaoke, or Asia in general, karaoke is very popular, it's not going to catch on in the West because karaoke has never been that popular in the West. And I covered, or I didn't cover it, but I did play a karaoke game on the Xbox 360 before I was a YouTuber. And yeah, my voice certainly did not play particularly well towards singing karaoke, and it certainly wouldn't be something I would proudly want to put online. So I guess that is kind of a confirmation that I probably would never cover a karaoke game. Probably not even spotlight it. It's also particularly hard to criticize those games because it's difficult to say if the game is detecting your voice and your pitch and your vibrato and things like that correctly, or if it's just kind of being super generous or super random about how it would score you. Also, I guess as a YouTuber I couldn't do a karaoke game because it would just get copyright claimed like crazy. Gearbox Studio Quebec is apparently coming to PAX East with some big announcements, including the reveal of Borderlands 3's second DLC campaign. Although, why Gearbox Studio Quebec put out, well, I guess they retweeted a Borderlands 3 tweet, is what I'm looking at. There's really no reason for me to be scrolling through my Twitter feed right now. I'm gonna have to do that later. Target creature with toughness of 4 or more. Alright, well, this is a worthless card on second thought. Next we have a game on Steam here called Neoverse, which looks like it's probably a Chinese player versus player MMO type game. It does have a somewhat interesting animation style to it, but it's kind of lacking in polish. There's just a huge amount of blonde people in this thumbnail, and in this video it seems like you get a lot more variety in the hair, but it does kind of feel like it's the same body styles. There is something weird about the anatomically far back shoulders, anatomically incorrect far back shoulders in this image, but like criticizing the thumbnail is probably not the best thing to focus on. Let's see, it's rated very positively. It almost seems like it's a card-based game that's been ported to PC. It feels like almost a mobile game. And so the thumbnail and the animation cutscenes seem to not really synergize much. Yeah, you have black hair, red hair, and blonde hair for this character. And it seems like if you switch hair color, you switch characters. So it feels almost like a League of Legends where there's barely 4 or 5 characters. This is 1999. Single player only? Wow, that's surprising. You can see the reviews here start in what looks like Chinese. It goes English and Chinese. This is probably, if I was to guess, a decent Chinese game that is relatively popular on mobile and just being ported to Steam. But it definitely seems to show the same flaws that you see in a lot of other Chinese games where the art style is just not that polished and the gameplay is just not that polished, that they're just not, they just don't have the experience of making games. They're literally 3 decades behind as far as video games concepts, and it's just going to take China probably another decade at least of trying to make cards, trying to make games, trying to compete, and they're always going to be in this market where good game developers in China unfortunately are going to get bundled with the terrible low effort asset flippers out of China in the same way any good Russian video game developers gets bundled together with the terrible low effort asset flip. Alright, so I guess I could probably do 6. Does that sound right? 5? 5 was right. So that gives it a 5-5. It's not particularly great either. I need a way to be able to attack. I should be attacking with the vigilance. Anyways. I need a way to be able to attack and not suffer from them defending with 2 or 3 characters. Yeah. Yeah, there's just not anything here, because it feels like you're basically playing something like Slay the Spire. Steam is even suggesting you check out Slay the Spire. But then you're playing as what kind of feels like some asset flip characters in Slay the Spire, fighting against some kind of generic enemies. It has this whole multiverse feel, which I don't really know in video games particularly how you do a multiverse story. I think probably you're biting off more than you can chew doing a multiverse story in general. There's something I guess I would say for the movie Jet Li's The One. Like they have multiverse as a concept there, but they spend very, very little time on it and just show the action movie and tell the action story that they wanted to tell. And I kind of feel like that is the best way to deal with something like that. Let's just all attack. Just all attack and see if that confuses them. As far as video games are concerned, there have been games where you have like a main universe and a mirror universe, and that's reasonable. There's been Zelda games like that. That's controllable. But trying to have 3 or 4 different universes like Neoverse seems to be doing is asking too much. Well, he let a lot of that through. Does that mean he's gonna win in the next turn? Or maybe, maybe not. Because I still have this to defend with, this to defend with, and this to defend with. Yeah. Yeah, I can't really think of... The Evil Within probably is the closest game I can think of that has multiverses and it doesn't really work well. There is also just the default concept that's easy enough to do, where you just have multiple levels and the levels loosely are connected enough that nobody questions it. For example, Resident Evil 4, you start in a Spanish village and then you get into a castle, an ancient castle, and then you get into a militarized island, and nobody really questions that at all. Hey, I actually did rank up. Just on the fact that you cannot lose pips. We got another Mastery Orb. And we'll get a little bit more gems and a pack. We doubled the number of gems just by getting 1 victory, and we double the number of gems, I guess, if we get another victory. So, ideally, you want to get at least 2 victories on the draft, because that's the most. Yeah, the Evil Within didn't really do the multiverse thing any justice, and it's so easy to do something like Resident Evil 4 where it's all in the same universe, but you just transition, you just walk through a cave and walk out into a different area, and that different area is a different universe effectively, or a different location. Like there's very little that you can do with a multiverse. Like Half-Life, I imagine there's kind of a multiverse story being told in Half-Life, but it's not the main focus. I'm not sure you ever leave Earth at all in the Half-Life story. Yeah, honestly, I'm not 100% certain on what that story really is at all. The whole Half-Life series could easily do for a remake to just tell a complete and total story without having to play the old games and spend a lot of time on it. Moving on, we have another asset flip game here called Anime War Modern Campaign, which makes me wonder if there are other anime war games they're playing on floating Steam with. And yeah, it's just an anime asset flip with some military background asset flips and military equipment and military guns. It's early access. They want $1.49, English full audio. And here is a prime example of a bundle. 16 games for $11.60. And then another bundle here of 6 items for $5.70. The prime example of people that Valve has been starting to crack down a little bit on for just abusing the bundling system. Right. course, that game is not going to make it to the fall list. I would definitely not want to support something like that. Next, we have an article from TechRaptor. The Witcher 3 Switch version 3.6 update adds cross-save support, which is great. I guess the real question here is if I was if I took my save file from the good old games version of Witcher 3 that I got, rebought Witcher 3 with the DLC on Steam, where I really want it to be, could I transfer the save file over through cross-save easily, or is it just easier for me to potentially copy and paste the save files over? It probably is easier just to copy and paste the save files over, but whatever. Cross-save is an interesting concept between two PC platforms. It would be slightly helpful. There's definitely a decent number of people who want to play games on PC but don't want to have to go digging into the file system for like where save files are kept. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Operating profits up at Paradox as monthly active players hit a record high. Paradox Interactive, what game? Let's see. Battletech, City Skylines, Europa Universalis, Hearts of Iron, and Stellaris. So, some relatively big name strategy games there. The kind of games that I typically am not interested in playing, though. Right. This one or this one. Let's see. Like, I could put more things on the field. It just wouldn't be smart. And I can't really attack either. See, if I convoke and tap something with vigilance, though, it still taps. I'm fairly certain. Let's see. Attacking doesn't cause a creature with vigilance to tap. That's all vigilance does. That's not a complete solution to say it's untappable. Now, if they did throw out the concept of untappable, that would be interesting. So the trick here is to get as many things on the field as possible. It's pretty obvious. But now he has a death touch creature, so if I was to attack at all, it's probably taking out my most powerful guy. Next, we have a game on Steam called Super Hiking League, which looks like it is a platforming game. Seems like it's kind of a combination of several player versus player arcade style games. Although I would call it climbing a lot more than hiking. Let's see. It requires a controller. It's $17.99, which is way too expensive. English, Portuguese, Brazil, and Japanese. And take your bet there whether this is a Japanese game or a Portuguese Brazilian game. If anything, I would guess it's probably a Brazilian game, for the simple reason that this image of a Super NES controller would not be what the Super Famicom controller originally looked like, because they were just gray buttons. Or am I backwards on that? Maybe in Japan they were colorful and they were gray in the West. Yeah. I don't know. Let's see. No attacks, I guess. Next, we have an article. Nintendo may be facing global Switch shortages because of the coronavirus, which sucks because I wanted to get a Switch. I hate to do this, but I'm going to mute myself for a second because I hear an obnoxious honking outside my house, and it's probably nothing to do with me, but I just want to make sure, you know? Make sure somebody's not honking their horn like crazy to get my attention. I'll be back in just a minute. Yeah, let's see. Yep. Take note. Don't honk your horn if you want to be a decent human being. It does not... that's not a thing to do in almost any scenario. Like, yes, I would accept it's okay if you were in imminent danger and or nearly approaching a crash scenario, but any other version of honking your horn is unacceptable. Particularly if you're honking your horn in a neighborhood to get somebody to come outside of the house, which I have had people in the past do that, and that seems to be the case in this case too. So yeah, very disruptive, very noisy, not necessary. Alright, so here's what we want to do. We've got a whole bunch of people. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus -2 plus 4 plus 2 is 6 again, I guess. So 6 plus 7. Can I seriously do 13? Can I really do 13? No. 12? So that taps everybody else, and then he just has to attack with the death touch people, and I can't really block him. Or he can defend with the death touch people, and I can't really block him. Or he could cast any spell to kill this guy, and then he could just pummel me completely. Anyways, yeah, Nintendo is facing potentially a global Switch shortage because of the coronavirus. There is something to be said also about thinking about getting a Nintendo console the third year in, because we're approaching the halfway point of what would be a reasonable lifespan of the Switch. It probably will have a decent long tail. I think that they'll certainly try to make sure whenever a Switch 2 comes out, it is not a Wii U type device, but I could also see it coming out earlier because, let's face it, the Tegra processor and it's not great. I could also see it coming out later. Nintendo, I don't think, wants to or could succeed at releasing a new model of the Switch every year like a cell phone. As much as I imagine they would really enjoy doing something like that. Let's see. 12, 12, and Vigilance. But none of them have flying, which would be the one thing I kind of would want. So, yeah. It is getting down to the point where if I am going to get a Switch, I probably need to get it in the next year and a half. Otherwise, forget it. Although, there's decent arguments to be made if you're going to get a Switch to get it after a Switch 2 has been announced. Particularly if a Switch 2 comes out and it's the same cartridges, the same games, just a like Pro Series of the Switch. If it's just an improvement with full backward compatibility, that would be fine. Meanwhile, Nintendo still needs to figure out how to do online, and they haven't gotten anywhere close to that. This is really just going to end up with him running out of cards. Because I'm going to be too afraid to attack. He's going to be too afraid to attack. I'm going to have more than enough life. So this is just going to be... Either he draws a card that is the perfect solution to my defense that clears the board or kills certain people, or... he'll run out of cards. But I want this victory pretty badly too, so I'm willing to do that. Yeah. I guess if the Nintendo Switch 2 came out and there was no backwards compatibility whatsoever, if that would be insanity. If there was just no backwards compatibility whatsoever for the Switch 2, then people would probably not want to get rid of their original Switches, so you're still kind of in a weird position. These guys all have Death Touch. So they're all going to get free hits. So what I have to figure out is what is the guy that actually has Death Touch by default. And what is the guy that is getting Death Touch because of some spell. This one I'm fairly certain does have Death Touch. So I'm gonna block those two. Take 10 damage. And then when we get to my turn, we'll see how this turns out. Because if this doesn't have Death Touch and it has Vigilance, then we should be fine. Yeah, they all lost Death Touch. So now I just want to decide what do I want to give Vigilance to. That. And this. And then we attack with that. And we attack with that. And while we're at it, let's just go attack for attack and see how this works. Gaming Future has an article here. Following Project Nova's quote-unquote end, CCP won't be as public with its early projects. CCP being the EVE Online developer. Apparently they were working on a game called Nova that got cancelled. I don't remember any of the story. Well, I kind of fuzzily remember something like that happening, but it certainly wasn't interesting enough, or it didn't get far enough to be like impressive. I feel like there definitely is a scenario where had CCP come out with Project Nova and shown a very interesting trailer, I would have been like, well, I've never played EVE Online, but I know it's a super successful game, therefore there is a very high chance that it would succeed well, and that they've got the money to make sure it succeeds. Josh on the chat says, get her done, win, smiley face. Well, I'm gonna try. We shall see. They're still not fighting against anything with Death Touch. So, with 3 that have Vigilance, attack again and we'll see what they want to do. Although, I maybe shouldn't have attacked and just let them attack me. I'm not sure. See, next we have a game on Steam called DCL the Game, which is being published for some reason by THQ Nordic. It's the Drone Championship League. This might be the first actual drone game that has enough polish on it to be worth considering, but if we look at the reviews, it's mixed. Part of the problem almost certainly is it's $25.49 when it probably should be a $10 game. See if we can see some of the reviews. Let's switch that around. There's a review here said, had high hopes, but it's sadly disappointing. They've got the speed way wrong. You feel like a tractor at 130 kilometers per hour. Another review says, maybe it's just me, but the game looks fun, but it has no weight to it when you're playing. I guess they're trying to put it nicely that it has been lifeless. Needs a lot of work is another review. So, unfortunately, it seems like Drone Championship League is not the drone game that I was hoping for. And it's not even a VR game. It even has online player versus player. A lot of the drone games to fly around drones are VR only, and they become a problem because of that. Honestly, I think this is a dead genre at this point. The fascination with drones will probably come in small waves, but not too many people are going to really want to play video games around it. Also, it's certainly something that would be inside of another game. Like Rainbow Six Siege is a great example of a game that probably already has a drone in it, and if it doesn't have a drone, then it definitely should have a drone in it. Well, this guy can still attack, and there's still no death touch creatures, so we attack again. Let's see, next game we have coming out is called Dead Time Defenders, which looks like a side-scrolling shooter game that seems to have its own little art style and its own polish to it. It looks a lot like Castle Crashers. There might be something to this. Let's see, it's early access for $14.99, English only with a third-party EULA. Well, maybe I've just been living at the bottom of the barrel too much with Steam games, but this actually looks like it's decent enough to deserve a follow. So, to the follow list it goes, and we managed to clear the board as I wasn't paying attention. So, next turn, unless he plays something, I think I've got to win. Next we have a game on Steam called Super Chicken Catchers, which looks nicely animated. I'm not sure what kind of game it is. It seems like it's probably an arena, player versus player. Is this literally just a like hog race? Are you literally racing on top of some kind of creature? You're playing as a pig, racing around, catching chickens, and the video doesn't want to play anymore. Hey, we got a victory. Hey, I might even make it up to bronze tier 2 this month. Well, we've got a win streak going, so let's keep this draft going. Yeah, I don't know about this. It's kind of like a racing game. I think it's player versus player is the problem. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's an English-French game where you play as a pig running around trying to run into chickens. You catch the chickens. It seems a lot like Monday Night Combat or Tuesday Night Combat, whatever that game was. It looks a lot like that. In a lot of ways it could be taking some of the concepts of Splatoon but losing the shooting element and turning it into more of a racing game. If there was any single player content here, I'd put it on the follow list, but since there isn't, I'll just leave it at where it is. If that looks interesting to you, that opportunity is there. This is probably a hand to mulligan, but I'm gonna keep it. Yeah, actually, I should have mulliganed it, because A, I only have 2 lands, and B, none of the lands actually would play with any of those characters. So, I am desperately now hoping that I draw something that I can play, because this card won't be playable until the 3rd turn, so I'd still have to draw a land, and this card won't do anything on the 3rd turn at all. So I set myself up for complete failure just by not mulliganing. Interesting. One of the games that I linked to took me back to the main Steam page, which means it's already been removed from Steam, which doesn't happen as often as you would think. Okay. So this lets me enchant a land. Of any color. Interesting. And it changed the skin because of that. Unless we put something on the field at least. What's funny here is I specifically was building more of a white deck than even a green deck, and the white cards have failed pretty miserably. I haven't played much of them at all. Oh, some of them. Like this and this I've played. Well, I guess that just generally means my deck is not that good. Like, the percentage of good cards in Magic compared to the percentage of bad cards is way different than Hearthstone. In Hearthstone you could have bad cards and they'd still be very playable. In Magic there are definitely some garbage cards that just cannot play at all. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Estonia: The Return of Yendor, which looks like a Diablo clone. It's got too much text happening down here and too much black screen on the sides because it's 4x3. If this is an old game getting re-put out, I don't remember anything called Estonia: Return of Yendor or Yendor in general. This doesn't look particularly interesting. It's a free-to-play game, so it's an MMO also. I don't know how they're making any money running an MMO with no microtransactions and looking like this. But yeah, that is just a royal flush of things that don't interest me. Gamatsu has an article here. Sayonara Wild Hearts is coming to Xbox One on February 25th. It's currently available for the PS4, Switch, PC, and Apple Arcade. So the Xbox One getting it particularly late. That's not something we see a lot of. I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see more of that as the new next generation of consoles come out. But if Microsoft is always a week later on the release dates than everybody else, that could certainly hurt their sales. What's so funny about this is, honestly, it's such a political idea as far as who's winning at any time, with the Sony, the PlayStation, and the Xbox. Like, to me, it feels like the Xbox is winning, but I just yesterday heard people saying that the Sony PlayStation is winning, and I'm like, well, I guess a lot of it may boil down to what games you're playing, and if you're playing things that aren't exclusive to anything, that might drastically change your opinion on things. From my perspective of trying to look at like every game that comes out and looking at it on who has the most variety, I would argue the PlayStation Network is nowhere close to the Xbox Games Pass or Xbox Arcade lineup, or and will exclude games for Windows in that conversation completely. And it still goes totally for the Xbox. Maybe at one point, or even now, you can make the argument that the PlayStation 4 Pro might be better than the Xbox Series X console, but that raw power does not make up for the poor PlayStation Network lineup, or the popularity of the PlayStation Network. So we got 2 victories, 200 gems for 5,000 gold, and a Ravnica pack. That's something. Let's see. So we got one of these cards, which we already saw was pretty worthless. We got these cards. This is new. This is new. And now we have 3 of those. And we got another Theros Beyond Death card pack, which you can kind of see none of these are new, and we're getting wild cards instead. Which the wild cards aren't going to fulfill anything. And then over here on the mastery side, we just need to throw in another gem to get another skin. So the thing to think about here is I can't afford this with gems, but this is basically what I should buy. It's like, it's kind of obvious now. If you're gonna ever play Historic, which kind of is where it should go if you're gonna stick with Magic for the long haul, you kind of need to spend what is probably about $25 to buy these specific cards so that your historic collection actually has those cards. We got a decent amount from the draft though, so, but these are all Ravnica cards, so we need to look at a combination of what cards do we have in Ravnica versus what cards do we not have in Ravnica, and see how one draft really affects things. So let's look at that. First, Historic Anthology. We still don't have any of those. So, yeah. About $25 to get all of these cards in at least one copy of each of these cards. Maybe they want you to really spend $100 and get 4 copies of each of these cards. The other thing I guess you could do is you could save up your wild cards, and let's see, all of these seem like they're going to be rares. Well, no, not all of them. So there is something to be said maybe about just making 4 of these to start with. Yeah, there's some commons. So I could probably have several of these cards. This is a rare uncommon. Or an uncommon, yeah. Not seeing any mythic rares in this collection. But then again, why do I need this if I'm going to play a historic event? Because if I play a historic event, I guess that is a deck building event, isn't it? So you would need to craft those with cards. Alright, Ravnica. Comparison of Ravnica cards. We have a bunch of cards with one. I'm not going to hover over them. I'm just going to stick my cursor where it doesn't pop up. So on the first page, there's one card we don't have here, which would be one, a wild to craft. And then we have a lot of things that we got when we just started the game by default. These are like default deck cards. And then we have a lot of things with just one. On the second page, we're missing 2 cards, one here and one here. And then the vast majority of these are still things we only have 1 copy of. On the third page, we are missing 3 cards, and we'll start missing more because we're looking at blue cards. On the fourth page, we're missing 4 cards, and yeah, at best we're getting 2 copies of things that we would have gotten in the draft or in pack openings. At worst, we don't have any. By this page, we are missing more cards than we have. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on this page missing. Even more cards missing over here, or the same amount. For black cards, only 1 on this page. There's several on this page. Yeah. It's not looking particularly good. So if we are going to just continuously embrace the Ravnica drafts, there definitely are cards to get. A lot of planeswalkers, lots of these dual action cards. But it is also worth remembering that getting these cards is basically just trying to expand your collection of historic for a Magic Arena, because there is no Pioneer mode. until Pioneer comes out and happens, I would be as willing to do a draft, I guess, with War of the Spark, because that's going to be banned at the same time, and we're missing a lot of cards there. So you're gonna have to be a little bit flippant here, and we're just collecting old cards because we're falling into the collector's mentality more than anything else. Same is true also for War of Spark here. These cards, if I did a draft here, would build up my collection, but they don't have any value for standard play. So if it weren't for the fact that I need to do drafts for gems, I would just hold on to my gold and potentially think about doing more pack openings when the next expansion happens. But that doesn't really work because I need the gems. And what would really be nice is if I could convert 50,000 gold to a mastery pass. So yeah, over here, if we scroll back here, if this was purchasable with gold instead of gems directly, that would solve everything. But yeah, what we're dangerously getting close to is the idea of just spending the money to buy these. Like these skins are pretty. You cannot deny that. They are very, very pretty, and probably playable for the rest of the existence of Magic Arena. There's also kind of a funny high value for these cards compared to a lot of the Theros Beyond Death other cards. Like, so can I really do this? It'd be 1,500 gems. 1,500 gold. Just to make me happy. I'm going to think about that, but maybe on Friday we will purchase all of these. That would put me in a little bit of a hole, but not too much. Well, at this point, let's go back to this and see, we're at silver tier 1, and I don't think we're going to get any further. So let's just play regular and try and get some victories. We have maybe 20 more news articles, but then I think a bunch are going to pop up. We have Alvaro on the chat. Sorry it took me so long to respond to you. The anthology rare are kind of weak. I don't know if that's supposed to be ants in particular or just anthology, and it just translated weirdly. So yeah, there's, do I want to play this? It's probably fine. We're still in a weird position as far as Theros Beyond Death deck rebuilds. I still really don't have a red deck. I still really don't have a blue deck. I have managed to make a minor adjustment to my black deck here and there, but that's about it. And I did make a major adjustment to my green deck. Whereas when I was playing Hearthstone, every expansion there were complete deck rebuilds, and for better or worse, they worked well enough that I could play with them. In this instance, I've made new decks as experimental decks for red and blue, but there's not any synergy in my mind there as far as what really to do to try and get victories and play this on kind of a professional mentality level, where I'm trying to get victories. I'm trying to get victories as quick as possible. I'm trying to ensure a high win ratio while not having to baby it like crazy. Let's see. This. And this. And this. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article here. The mobile quizzing company HQ Trivia is shut down. Giant Bomb in particular, super enthralled with HQ Trivia about 1.5 to 2 years ago. But after the first host of this kind of live HQ 1 versus 100 style of a game show via a phone app, after the first host got fired, it seemed like most people lost a lot of interest in it, and it seemed like it was just being run into the ground by the person in charge. I don't think there was really a lot of meat on that bone anyways. It almost seems like something, if it had the funding of being on TV, you might be able to keep it going as something like The Price is Right or Wheel of Fortune or something like that. You could definitely make shows like that and integrate it into an app and sell ads against it. But a phone app by itself, I don't think was enough. Let's see. This is not going to work well. So, yeah. There really was never anything stopping somebody else from making an HQ Trivia type game, and nobody did, which showed that it probably was at a full saturation, even with only one style game like that being in the market. And we've heard the same thing with things like 1 versus 100 on Xbox Live. Even though I found that incredibly fun and popular, they seem to let's see. Do 4 damage? No, decline. I don't know if this is going to be enough to save me. Yeah. I kind of wonder if Microsoft was going to go back and do 1 versus 100 again, if they could just automate that in such a way that it really wasn't that expensive for the server space and the bandwidth. Or if it still would just run into the same scaling problems. Let's see. Deal 3 damage. So I sacrificed him, made a food token, and then lost immediately because of that. He can just draw more cards. This is a great example of a card that just needs to be destroyed. Like, let's see. Let's go over here and test out the red deck. See if we can learn something more. Next, we have a game on Steam called Bounty for Sharks, which looks like an asset flip first-person shooter, low polygon game. It looks kind of like a tech demo more than even a game. It's 98 cents with a 1% discount. That's ridiculous. English only. Yeah, nothing impressive there. I guess part of the problem why I haven't so far been able to rebuild a red deck is the fact that I've not really had a lot of extra time to do anything, because every single day you're around this concept in Magic Arena where you have to do the daily quests, or you have to do a draft, or you have to do some other event, or at least you're suggested to do another event. The whole lifestyle concept of playing Magic is just constantly smacking against reality for me. It's just like you're asking too much of me. It's like an obsessive girlfriend, effectively, is Magic the Gathering in general. It's just like it wants every second of your time, not really giving much back for that time. It's just not reasonable. Wizards of the Coast desperately needs somebody who can understand reality and reason, and maybe Hasbro, now owning Wizards of the Coast, might see some of that, but I seriously doubt it. I imagine Hasbro is just going to push for more and more and more and more. I don't know how the shareholders would come back with any other idea than, of course, there's going to be more money and more concepts from Wizards of the Coast, more content, more things for sale. Like we see it in the store already. The store with the most recent update has added more and more daily. They've added daily sales. They didn't even exist before, and more things are available for purchase. It's the problem with capitalism in general, is that it's not good enough just to make a reasonable amount of money. It's not good enough to make enough money that everybody succeeds and everybody gets paid and everybody's happy. No, you have to make all the money. You have to make sure your opponents are total failures and that there is no competition. You have to move towards a monopoly, regardless of how moral, ethical, or useful it would be for you to be in a monopoly in the first place. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article here. Baldur's Gate 3 gameplay premiere is set for February 27th. So, I think we've kind of seen maybe a teaser trailer for Baldur's Gate 3 already. I think this was the one where the guy gets engulfed by black goo. And people were slightly hyped about it, but then, like so many of these hype videos, there's kind of no follow-up because it takes them another year plus to actually release the game. Let's see. Create a X1 creature with trample and haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next turn. Twice the damage to target creature or planeswalker. So we might be able to do this next turn and do 5 extra damage if we've got nothing better to do. TechRaptor has an article here. Flawed foundations lead to empires in ruins. This seems to be an advertisement / review of a game, which I guess is called Empires in Ruins. Looks like it is a strategy throughout the ages style game, but that's not very visually polished. It says Empire in Ruins makes a grand attempt at layering more depth into a traditional tower defense game. Oh, it's a tower defense game, but falls a bit short. City building, resource management, and working to fight off a rebellion are interesting features. However, these parts become repetitive and trivial to manage your progress. While labeled as a 4X game, it really delivers mostly in the area of expansion. You will progress in a somewhat linear fashion, taking one nearby province after another. Let's see. Let's do this. 5. This isn't gonna work at all. But it has trample. I guess that'll work somewhat. So yeah, Empires in Ruins, not anything of interesting. Go. TechRaptor has a review here. I think it's a review. Take your time rebuilding the world in Littlewood. This looks like a Stardew Valley type game with kind of cutesy RPG Maker-esque. Wow, I wouldn't even call it RPG Maker. It looks like Stardew Valley with decent 8-bit pixel graphics or 16-bit pixel graphics. See if they have a review score here at the bottom. Littlewood melds together many things I love about some of my favorite games across multiple different genres, and it does it really well. If you like farming RPGs, city builders, and even collectible card games, there's probably something you'll love about Littlewood too. I would say my distaste for Stardew Valley, I really didn't like that game. Probably prevents me from wanting to play that game. Alright. Can I activate this ability multiple times? I probably could and should. I don't think there's a reason not to. Activate this ability now. Just activate the ability multiple times. You didn't think about that? So that gets him down to 1. Let's see, Gamatsu has an article here. The deck building roguelike One Step from Eden for Switch and PC launches March 26th. Mega Man Battle Network-esque real-time grid-based combat. Interesting. I've heard people do like the Battle Network style of gameplay, and I could see maybe getting into this. It feels like it's a little bit fast for a collectible card game experience. And then the graphics are a little bit pixely. But yeah, I'd be willing to put this on the follow list. Let's see how that really plays. this wouldn't be a game I could play for too long, but if it only has like 12 bosses and is relatively cheap, yeah, sounds like there might be something there as a short and one assumes cheap game. Alright, so I'm gonna win regardless because of his ability before they even attack. So is there anything big to change about that deck? I'm not sure. I don't think so. Probably is better strategies. Like, it feels like, particularly in red decks, you have to have a balance of spells that are aggro and do damage, and creatures that are aggro and do damage, and enchantments and artifacts and things like that that are aggro and do damage. It doesn't seem like you can just have a deck of 60 cards between lands and spells, which is ideally what you would want. Is you'd want a 2-turn win or for 1-turn win where you could cast a spell, it would draw another spell out of your hand as an instance, do some damage, cast another spell, do more damage. But it's not that simple. Gamma Sutra has a blog here, the state of Steam discoverability for February 2020. Honestly, I think it's not like Steam discovery was great, but it does seem like it's getting better. But then again, also for January and February, it's not like there's a lot of competition going on either. Metro Exodus is pretty much the only AAA game that's come out on Steam since the beginning of the year. So, yeah, games probably are pretty discoverable right now since there's not a lot of competition. And, of course, there's always a ton of garbage that gets released. But Valve is adding new features and helping the consumer as much as they're helping the people selling the games by trying to improve and create customized feeds that actually work compared to, say, the YouTube algorithm, which seems to more try to push everybody into a generic watching stance where everybody sees the same top 100 trending videos instead of people getting a more individualized experience. It's so funny that YouTube is kind of the only social media site that does that too. If you go to Facebook, you're not seeing the top 100 Facebook posts probably. If you go to Twitter, if you're looking on your homepage, you're probably not seeing the top 100 tweets. Depending on who you follow, it is more customized. Can't block this turn, does 3 damage, does 2 damage. See. This one could get a buff. If this one got a buff, it couldn't attack anyways though, so why bother? But yeah. For as polarizing as going to other things like Twitter and Facebook is, at least it is an attempt at customization, whereas YouTube really wants to boil everybody down into a mushy soup, I guess is the best word. Like, you have to struggle and work hard to see the videos that you actually want to see on YouTube. You have to bend over backwards. It's a terrible system. And I don't see how it really even benefits YouTube. Steam, on the scale, does try to promote games to you, but it does mostly try to promote top tier best selling games to you also. So if you own if you own everything already, you will have a different experience than somebody who is relatively new and only owns 5 or 6 games. There we go. Next, we have a game on Steam called Lost Brothers, which looks to me like it's probably an adventure game. Maybe a little bit of a walking simulator, but only in the same way as like that game What was that? Not The Witness, but Firewatch? Yeah. Yeah, Firewatch is pretty much a walking simulator too, and this looks a lot like this. This would be an interesting game to get to just then talk about how Firewatch is blacklisted, and it's not a game I'm going to ever cover. And it's kind of ridiculous the reason why it is blacklisted, because what they did is simply threatened to DMCA PewDiePie for something that had nothing to do with Firewatch. But anybody that threatens or does commit false DMCA claims, which this most definitely would have been a false DMCA claim, is not going to get any coverage from me, because they might do the same to me. Lost Brothers, $7.19 discounted, English and Russian. That's a little suspicious, but I'm going to put it on the follow list and give it a chance. See what people say. I think we've got a win here. Fairly easily. One damage to any target. So we set that as a target. And we'll put that on top just in case something bad goes wrong. Why did that do 2 damage? I thought that would have only done 1 damage. Hey, we got a core set 2020. Which, these are the cards I probably, if I was going to buy packs, probably not a terrible thought to say core set 2020. Here's a new card. Here's a new card. And here's some wild cards. And there's a new card. We've spent too much time in the collection, but I would like to see what a core set 2020 collection looks like. There's a lot of room to get cards here, but then there's a lot of cards here that I know I have that are reprints. See, I'm fairly certain that the core set cards are always reprints, and you're pretty much going to get the similar, if not the exact same reprints in core set 2021. So I don't know. I don't know if it's ever really valuable to try and get the core set cards. In a weird way, it seems like you probably should just break up the core set reprint cards and put them in the other expansions and just say that there's going to be a certain high number of reprints in the other expansions. But I guess that's probably why they created the core sets in the first place, is because people weren't buying booster packs that potentially was going to give them just reprints. I'm not moving fast enough here, so we still got a lot of news. Gematsu has an article here. Dissidia Final Fantasy NT's last major update launches March 5th. I don't know if this is the last online Final Fantasy. I suspect it isn't, because I think Final Fantasy 14 or 13 is online only. There's no current plans for a sequel, and online services to continue. But for how long is the real question. There's a real problem with how many different things get labeled as a Final Fantasy game when it really shouldn't have been. I guess at the heart of it, the problem is Final Fantasy is this implication of being some similar connected universe that it kinda isn't. And it's an indication of it there being a level of quality that isn't really guaranteed. When you let what wasn't originally intended to be a series become a series, it's inevitably going to be a little listless and go nowhere. I guess you could say a similar concept with Star Trek. As painful as it may be to admit, like Star Trek the Next Generation, they had some concepts behind them, but I'm not sure that even the original Star Trek, with its 3 seasons, really intended to be a long-running series with many sequels, and it certainly became that to the point where there's just too much Star Trek being made, and we're dangerously approaching more bad Star Trek than good Star Trek. Star Wars, in a similar way, I think you can make the argument that they weren't really planning on that being a series, they just got lucky. And that's true for a mini-series, mini-series. How do I say that without... I mean the word mini, M-A-N-Y, not mini, M-I-N-I. Let's see, we need to kill something. Just out of spite. Kill something. But yeah, I think particularly in Star Trek's case, it was Deep Space Nine was the turning point, because there seems to me wasn't any real planning to make a Deep Space Nine, or they hadn't hired enough writing or done enough writing to make Deep Space Nine, and so instead they stole the concept of Babylon 5 and then kind of went nowhere with it. Or did, at best case scenario, they did a decent job ripping off Babylon 5. Of course, many people won't have seen Babylon 5, so they don't know that. I'm talking about TV though, not video games. So we have a game here called The Great Alchemist, which is just a match 3 game. Unless it's like Honey Pop Simulator 2, I'm probably not interested in playing a match 3 game. It's got to have some other twist to it, something that would catch people's attention. This is $1.49 discounted, English and Russian, and it has 5 achievements that are numbered, so it might be an achievement game. So yeah, nothing special there. And yeah, if you were gonna make a match 3 game, why not just do what Candy Crush did, make a mobile game and do it better and not rip people off like Candy Crush does. Although Candy Crush is just so good at tricking people into playing it and spending money on it that they were super successful with that. I guess we'll do one more game, and then I'm gonna, after this game, just wrap up whatever is left. We have a game on Steam here called Adore, which looks like a top-down hack and slash game with a decent amount of visual polish. Looks like there's something here. It's rated positively. It's early access for $9.99. English, Portuguese, and Portuguese Brazil for the languages. So I'm going to put that on the follow list. Maybe a decent AA, single A type game. Here, they've decided not to give me any cards for a while. Just going to keep all of that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Warzone 2100, which looks like a Windows 95 strategy, real-time strategy game. Looks terrible. Maybe it is an old game. Yeah, it seems like it actually is. Came out in 1999. It's free, so I guess the price is right. But I don't have any nostalgia for this game. So I don't know what you really say about that. Like, there was thousands upon thousands of Windows 95S games, DOS games that came out, and I'm sure there was many of them that were relatively good for the time, but they didn't get any relevancy because nobody talked about them. Back in the day when the internet barely existed, there weren't streamers and there weren't like video game magazines talking about small PC games so much. So I can't really do anything with it. I can only say Warzone 2100 is out there. If you remember that game or want to play a game, play that game. It's there, but that's the entirety of my review. Because if I go any deeper, I have to say it's pointless to play. If you haven't played it and you have no nostalgia for it, it doesn't inform the current state of video games. It isn't a foundational game that you should look upon. Unlike something like Doom, where Doom is majorly relevant and definitely informs where first-person shooters came from, and was definitely popular. And we have Doom remakes coming out even to this day, and new levels for the original Doom still potentially being made, although I'm not 100% sure of that. It's almost certainly the case. Right. Play this. 1 damage up to 3 targets. I need to do this and this next turn, and then maybe this will let me get somewhere too. Next, we have a game on Steam called Era of Survival, which is just a low-effort asset flip survival games. I'm glad to see people have stopped making these, but we are getting the occasional one of these open world survival games. This is early access for $10.50, discounted, English, allegedly full audio. There is a lasting impact, unfortunately, for people for certain styles of games becoming popular and people just getting committed to making these games and selling them, we will probably never see a point unless Valve just banned single cheap survival games. Like we probably will never get to a point where that is something that would stop being a thing. I just have to hope this works. Now, I didn't have enough mana. Did get rid of one, but that's probably not right. So the fact that something like Fortnite is popular probably guarantees that we will see something like Fortnite constantly getting made and put out on Steam many years past its prime. This is a great example of just, if you have to use your aggro spells to defend, you've lost the game. So I need some kind of counter to something like this in a red deck, which probably means it shouldn't be a solo red deck. Yeah, I've lost. There's no way I don't lose this next turn. Next, we have a game on Steam called Magical Diary Wolf Hall, which seems like it's probably a Westerner's attempt at doing something like a Harry Potter clone visual novel with some dungeon crawling. It looks pretty terribly animated. Let's see. It's a dating sim, it says. It's $21.24 discounted, which is way too expensive. English interface only, no full audio. 36 achievements, which is a little high. Says it has over 400,000 words and 75 spells to learn. But it just looks terrible. Like, the animation is not there. That is the only thing that has to be good in a visual novel, is the animation and the music a little bit, and that's it. And it's mostly still animation to boot. So if something looks terrible, it's definitely not worth purchasing. Alright, so on this Wednesday, we need one more victory for the weekly. We are now quickly settling into barely getting 5 victories per day. And in the past month or so, since I started playing, pretty much since I started playing Magic Arena, I've been like connecting the games and hoping people get bored and disconnecting to try to get some other victories. And that's gotten me 2 or 3 victories, just quick victories that way. But honestly, it's just wasting so much time that we are really down to the point where I'm getting about 5 victories every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and that's it. Is that drastically affecting whether I'm going to be able to finish this all the way to level 90? I don't think so. But we might be a little short. We might not get as many uncommon cards as one might like. I suppose I could go on a bit of a rant here, and let's see. If we were to just look at not collected, historic, and core 2020 common cards, could I make one of each of these? No, not really. What if we got rid of the core 2020 set element there? Could I make the historic set of common cards. Pretty much, yeah. One. Not standard legal. Not playable and standard. So, we're getting a nice big warning there. But if I was to switch around and come over here and say craft this, no problem crafting this. But this won't be standard legal in a couple of months. And some of these are definitely reprints of other cards I already have. It's almost like let's look at this one. This one is called Orator. O-R-A. So, and then I'm going to just go collected, not collected from any set. I have 4 copies of this from this symbol that came with the game. Where did that, what symbol is that? Is that Ravnica Allegiance? Having a hard time looking. I think that's Ravnica Allegiance. So you had Ravnica Allegiance, and then we can have this. Can I have more than 4 of the same color card? Because that was one of the things I wanted to check. So let's go back to a deck. We'll take this white deck, edit this deck, and then we're going to type in Orator again. We have all 4 of those in the deck. Can I put more in? No. It won't let me do it. This is the problem. This is the problem in a nutshell with Magic Arena. They're selling you core set cards that, unless I'm totally mistaken, when Core Set 2021 comes out, Core Set 2020 and Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance and War of the Spark are all going to leave standard. All 4 of these expansions are going to leave standard. In the next expansion, I guess. I guess that's when that happens. So, what kind of insanity is there for them to reprint cards? It really almost is like a digital attempt at saying, we didn't print enough of these cards that are kind of good in this expansion, but it doesn't really matter as far as standard is concerned. So is that all the core sets really are? Is that them just adjusting the numbers in paper magic, and that's for some stupid reason being translated? So there's no reason why I would want to waste my wild cards making core 2020 cards. And then questionable reasons, I guess, as far as what I would want to do with historic. I kind of think we do nothing. I think we just sit on the wild cards. Yeah. I think I'm just going to have a pile of wild cards by the time I'm done playing Magic Arena and I'm just done playing Magic again. I think I'll probably just spend a bunch of wild cards on ridiculous things. Anyway, let's wrap up the news. We still have a ton. We have a game on Steam here called Trap, which looks like a top-down shooter that was with some dark screenshot syndrome. Seems like you're fighting some asset flip zombies. 99 cents English only. Nothing there. See, what's going to happen is we're going to have a whole bunch of whole bunch of games on Friday, and it's probably going to be a slow Friday. Here we have a game called Beach Anime Day, which is a jigsaw puzzle with characters that maybe you could make the argument or an anime style in the 80s, but honestly this just looks like a weird Western anime. They're trying to kind of copy that style. It's $1.19, English only. It seems to not really have any nudity or sexual content tagged on it, so it's not even selling on the lewdness. TechRaptor has an article for Luna the Shadow Dust review. Let's see, it looks like a point and click adventure. Looks nicely animated in that cutscene. Looks like it might be a bit of a climber. Another cutscene animation. Let's see, summary, they give it a 7.0. Luna the Shadow Dust is a beautiful game with a mysterious world. While not for those seeking a strong story or intimately clever puzzles, it provides a fun, whimsical experience. Pros are gorgeous art style and soothing soundtrack. Cons are a lack of words and text made the plot unclear, and puzzles and character abilities were not logical or properly defined. So, yeah. Maybe if it was cheap, I would consider putting that on the follow list, assuming it is even a PC game. See, we already talked about this, but Gamma Sutra has the same article. Activision Blizzard pulled support for NVIDIA's GeForce Now streaming platform. There seems to be an update here. NVIDIA has offered an explanation as to why Activision pulled support. It claims the situation was a result of a fairly innocuous misunderstanding. From what I understand, there was either going to be a renegotiation or the games were only listed until launch, and then GeForce Now is doing something that is like a soft launch but not the official launch, and so they were trying to kind of weasel their way around it, according to Activision Blizzard, and from what it sounds like, which is weird. Certainly that NVIDIA would be the bad guys, but who knows how that negotiation went down. I could certainly see Activision Blizzard being the bad guys in the negotiation and peeving the people who are peeving the NVIDIA people enough that they decided to just try and pull a fast one on them. But either way, it's not good business if it gets emotional and childish. Next, we have a game on Steam that's just a bunch of Chinese characters. Looks like it's a Plants vs. Zombies-esque tower defense game, which actually would be a little bit more the speed and style of a Chinese developer, so I can't say I think that it's a bad idea for them to make a game, and they're definitely putting their polish of having way too much stuff and way too much text in it. English is not supported, unfortunately, for this free-to-play game. Single player MMO, probably for no reason, Chinese only. It does seem like this kind of game would be more their speed, and this does look like a more polished game. It still looks like a mobile game that really shouldn't be on Steam, but it's a lot better than a lot of the other Chinese games we've seen. Open Critic has an article here, and Animal Crossing Nintendo Direct is coming later this week. After this announcement, there may not be any first-party titles or announcements at all for the rest of the year, as far as Nintendo is concerned, which isn't good. I guess you can put it that way. The Metroid Prime 3 game should come out, but that's not really even a first-party title. And if it's delayed and it doesn't come out, the lineup doesn't sound great. Of course, they may just trickle out a bunch of third-party titles or a bunch of updates for current games, and they may be fine with that. Or they may just slow it down to match the fact that they can't sell that many Switches in the first place. It would almost be nice with the economy if there were several Christmases that happened where there really wasn't much that needed to be purchased or wanted to be purchased by children and parents and such. If we could just all take a decade off of consumerism, that probably would be good for everybody's bottom line. Gematsu has an article here. Rakugaki Kingdom is delayed to the early summer in Japan. This looks like it's some kind of Pokemon style clone. Let's see. It was going to be available for iOS and Android. So, I don't know if this game would ever come to the West, and if almost certainly would come with a different name if it did. Let's see. OpenCritic has an article here. The Final Fantasy VII Remake will seemingly take up to 100 gigabytes of hard drive space. That's quite a lot. Yep. It is also almost a good thing in my case, because what I need is bigger hard drives. Like, we need to be approaching 24, 36 terabyte hard drives that are of reasonable price, and hard drive spaces and hard drive technology really hasn't caught up with that as much. And so most people don't need more than a 6 terabyte hard drive, even if you were going to be building a PC gaming space. But I certainly could use one. Even with compression, all the data on my server is somewhere above 12 terabytes. So it's not realistic, as much as I'd like to buy a 12, maybe 16 terabyte hard drive and try and copy everything over to one hard drive to then put it back on the RAID array. And the RAID array itself can't really grow until hard drives get cheaper. Thus, I can put more larger capacity disks in it and grow it that way. Next, we have a game on Steam called Skull the Hero Slayer, which looks like a fast-paced action hack-and-slash game. Looks like it's pretty well animated, pretty smooth in its movement. It's rated very positively. It's early access for $14.39, a little expensive. Bunch of language supports. Yeah, that definitely deserves to be on the fall list. Actually, we've had a decent day today of games going to the fall list. Like, we really weren't scraping the bottom of the barrel just looking for a terrible game, looking at terrible games that came on Steam. We still saw a lot of them, as usual, but not as much as we have been. Next, we have a game on Steam called Worlds of Conquerors Origins, which looks like a strategy battle simulator game. Nothing special about this, and not my style of game anyways. It's free to play, and it's an MMO online player versus player with in-app purchases, and it's English only with allegedly full audio. So definitely not my style of game. Let's see. We already talked about the coronavirus several times affecting Switch's supply. And then Steam put out the top releases for January 2020, and we want to cover that. So January's top releases, we have Sands of Salazar, a game I totally don't recognize at all. It's some kind of Chinese game. Paranormal HQ, another Chinese game. Robot Wars X. Gymcraft Frostborn Wrath. We have Atelier Aisha, a port of a DS, I believe, Atelier game, and Atelier Esha and Logi, another port. These were extremely expensive games when they were priced. They were like $40-$50 for a DS game that's old. So 3 Atelier games immediately shoot to the top of the sales list. Some convenience store, then a bunch of Korean writing. So yeah, the Asian markets took the sales. Is that because of the lunar holiday? Because they had more free time, or because of the lunar holidays sales promoting people purchase more things? I'm not sure. But you can see there's no Western games being listed here at all. Romance of the Three Kingdoms, I guess here. Well, nope, that's a Japanese company too. Like, have we seen a single Western publisher or developer on this list? There's one from Hungary. Gymcraft is from Hungary. But everything else has been China, Japan, and one Korean game. Tim Tim is from Spain, and that's early access. Utawaru Mono, Mask of Deception, another Japanese game. And then The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, which is, I believe, a VR game. And, well, maybe a decent VR game in the Walking Dead universe. Still not a particularly good VR game. Commando Z from a Spain developer. Warhammer Online from Australia. Coffee Talk from Indonesia. The Pedestrian, that's one I definitely want to play as a puzzle game from the US. Estella from Korea. Not for broadcast from the UK. So, yeah. Western games fail miserably in January. Asian games do pretty well, but not like a lot of those Asian games were good Asian games either. Like, as much as I might be a Asian-phile, Japanophile, most of those games were either old games or bad games, and they just succeeded due to a lack of competition. So it would have been a smart move for a Western games company to put out their game in January. If they can't make the Christmas time deadline. Honestly, if you can't make Black Friday, you've got plenty of time between Black Friday and January 1st to decide that you're going to release your game on January 1st. And you probably should do that. As far as free games, we have one called Darwin Project from a Canadian, the Coloring Game from a Russian company, a Soviet Jump Game from a US company, Grim Clicker from Russia, Soccer Management from the UK. And yeah, their last comment on their blog was the Lunar New Year sale. Yep. I think I cannot understate how many of these Japanese games or Asian games sold simply because there was no competition and it was Lunar New Year, and so kids had pocket money and they could buy games. I think this is a decent game. This, I think, is an early access. This is almost certainly garbage. This is alright, but not great. I never even heard of this one. These were really expensive games. And this obviously isn't going to be that good. Super Robot Wars, I don't think, was particularly good. Paranormal HQ, I don't think was particularly good. And Sands of Salazar isn't particularly that good. So, and all I did was just open all the images of those, didn't I? Stupid me. I thought I was opening links. Alright, well, then that brings me to the Humble Bundle store. And let's see if there's any new Humble Bundle before we wrap up for today. Nope, no new Humble Bundle. So then that brings me back to Twitter, of which I think I was getting the feeling I was probably going to have a decent amount of new games come out and announcements. But honestly, we might as well just talk about it on a slow Friday as much as we talk about it on a slow Wednesday. Let's see. Annapurna Interactive announces its PAX East 2020 lineup. I think there will be a growing story as far as people going to PAX East instead of really focusing on going to E3. Maybe to the point where in 2 or 3 years people are just skipping E3 completely. But that's been a growing concern. Although, here's a story that kind of countered that idea. PlayStation's PAX East events have been canceled due to the coronavirus. So at this point, you can make the argument that PlayStation is just using any excuse whatsoever to not announce anything ever. Because they were not coming to E3. They announced that. They said they were going to have a whole bunch of other events and talk about announcements then. One of those events was PAX East. Now it's going to be canceled. How many of the 200 plus events that the PlayStation said they were going to do, how many of those are going to be canceled due to the concern of the coronavirus? Are we very possibly going to enter 2021 without any announcements whatsoever for the PlayStation 5? That would pretty much be the end of the PlayStation as a console. And I think I saw at least speculation that the PlayStation 5 was going to be their last console anyways. So, yeah, that's crazy. The World Championship, which is not being advertised anymore on this, I never got anything that seemed specifically marked as a reward for choosing your champion in the World Championship. Maybe that means the person I picked didn't go very far and I got one pack and didn't even realize it. But that is a little weird that they didn't make it more obvious. And yeah, we're getting a couple of games that seem like they're worth mentioning, and I'm just kind of curating some other things. So you have like Gearbox saying they are going to be at PAX East, Sony, PlayStation saying they're not. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 50-50 of some people backing out, some people staying in. Even the Mobile World Conference, people had already bought their hotels that were non-refundable. They had already bought their airplane tickets that were non-refundable. So there definitely were some people thinking about flying to, I believe Taiwan is where the Mobile World Congress is, and just having an experience and meeting with some people and have some meetings, even if the event itself is canceled, which probably counters the idea. And that's an example, I guess, of where a government should step in more than an individual group, because sure, a Mobile World Conference can cancel their event and not encourage people to come to the Asias while coronavirus is a big concern, but only a government could say, actually, we're going to just shut down all non-essential travel. All right. So Annapurna Interactive's lineup is going to be The Artful Escape, If Found, The Pathless, and an unannounced title. Maybe I've heard of The Artful Escape. The other two I haven't heard of. So not a lot of meat on that bone. Ys Memory of Celceta for PC has been updated with Japanese audio, and Ys The Oath of Felghana has been updated with English audio. Both titles on sale until February 26th. So the Ys series turning into a better offering. Let's see, the PS4 version of this game is due out in the spring, so that might be why the PC versions are getting the bump of translations there. We have a game on Steam here from Daedalic, which they were struggling to make money last I heard. The Suicide of Rachel Foster. This looks like a kind of gone home mystery game, walking simulator. I'll put it on the follow list. I think we're probably going to ride the roller coaster of Daedalic's experience all the way down. See, and here's like, this is like a retainer, but you can barely tell what it is, particularly if you don't know what a retainer looks like. But yeah, maybe a good game, maybe not. Knowing Daedalic, there's a decent chance that it'll be mediocre with a disappointing ending. Metacritic gives it a 74. How Metacritic has that score already, I don't know, but whatever. TechRaptor has a review for Fire Emblem Three Houses Cindered Shadows, which I assume is a DLC element. Yep. Seems like there's still a lot of talk and a lot of hype and a lot of love for the Fire Emblem series, but since it's kind of a Nintendo only console, it's not a lot to say for me. They gave it an 8.0. It's the conclusion of the Three Houses expansion pass. You can read the article more if you want to know pros and cons. I'm just going to skip it relatively quickly. Alright, and that's pretty much all I can do. I could play more Magic, but I don't feel like it. I've covered all the news. We'll be back on Friday. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos, because that helps me with YouTube, if there is any help I can ever get with YouTube. If you want a friend to follow me on any other social media sites to get backup notifications, there's a bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist or a gift card. Thank you for watching.